Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Career Day 2011. We have about 52 companies here today, so it's a great day. We also have Steve Bauman with us, who is our friend at Marriott, who will kick things off this morning. Let me tell you a little bit about Steve. This is his second career. He spent 20 years serving our country and been with Marriott for 20 years. He'll fill in the rest of the details as he sees fit. He's a grappler, I know that much. Steve has been coming to Purdue how many years, Steve? 6 years. And I've had the good fortune to meet with him and just want to share a quote that I think is appropriate when thinking about Steve. Somerset Maugham wrote, "When you choose friends, don't be shortchanged by personality over character." Steve has always impressed me as one of those people with character and interested in character. Steve, we're very glad that you're here to join us today.
Thanks, Richard. Appreciate it. Can you all hear me out there? Awesome. Okay, it's career days, right? How many seniors out here? Raise your hands. Juniors, sophomores, plebes. Oh, those are freshmen. Excuse me. All right. I want you to remember a few things. I'm not going to get into the presentation just yet. Death by PowerPoint, I'm sure you're all familiar with that in your classroom. Hopefully we'll make it a little interesting this morning. I want you to remember some things about leadership that are important and have served, I think, me well over the years. The first thing is authenticity. Don't be a poser, guys. Go into every interaction, every job, every relationship, and be yourself. Be authentic. That's the first thing. Second thing is be resilient, not resistant to change. And in case you haven't been reading the paper, which is an old school thing, but if you haven't been on your devices looking at what's going on in the world, the world is changing rapidly. Currently, the global economy is creating a lot of ripples. And those ripples can and will affect careers and where you all may wish to go someday. The third thing I want you to remember is that when put into a position in the world of work, lead by example. Don't be afraid to roll up your sleeves and show the people that you're required to inspire in a common direction. Make sure they understand that you're there with them and not over them, okay? How many people aspire to go out into some sort of management position upon graduation from Purdue University? Okay. Now, management's not an end-all and be-all because you can be a leader in any sort of situation, okay? But roll up those sleeves and get engaged. And the truth is, Marriott International comes to Purdue because you all, in general, I hate to make an overgeneralized statement, but in general, you all do roll up your sleeves and do what it takes to get the job done. And that's what we love about Purdue graduates. Now, the last point that I want you to remember today is you need to be visible. How many people belong to a fraternity, a club, an association, inside work, outside work, at school, not school? Raise your hand. Come on, raise them up high. Okay, excellent. How many of you, and I want you to raise your hands, if I went to one of your professors and asked, do you know so-and-so, would the professor know who you are? Raise your hand. Have a few less hands being raised. Okay, visibility. And how you do that is through a network, a reciprocal value relationship with others in the world that you interact with. You need to be visible, and if you're not, you're going to be challenged when you go into the world of work, particularly in hospitality. It's a high energy, on your feet, face-to-face sort of business. Now, I'm not going to point out anyone because these lights are so bright I can't see you. Not that I would anyway. But some of you, your face would crack if you smiled, okay? You may be in the wrong major. If you're a senior, don't quit. Your parents will kill me for saying this. But be aware, it's a very high energy, face-to-face, service and hospitality-oriented industry, okay? All right. Now we're going to get into the PowerPoint. I want to give you a few slides about Marriott. How many of you know the history of Marriott? Where we started, all that stuff? Alan, we need to do a better job in these presentations for these folks. All right. So here are the roots. The lady and gentleman on the left, as you're looking at the screen, are J. Willard Marriott Sr. and his wife Alice Sheets Marriott. They started this whole thing. This gentleman was a visionary. He was an 8th grade dropout, the son of a sheep farmer out in Utah, with no means necessarily of going on and getting an education. However, he seized an opportunity upon return from his mission trip. He seized upon an opportunity with a gentleman out in Utah who later became the president of Weber University. But Weber College was a 2-year institution, and this gentleman took J. Willard under his arm, helped him get through those 2 years, and then matriculate to the University of Utah where he received his degree. Today, the family gives a lot of their resources through their philanthropy and endowment to schools just like Purdue, just like they did to help build Marriott Hall, because education is the key to opportunity. If you look at the unemployment rates, folks, it's 9.1%. That's the general. For people with college degrees, it's about half of that, okay? So getting an education is extraordinarily important. And that little 9-seat root beer stand, they decided, or I should say J. Willard decided, when he was returning from his mission trip, because he's a Mormon, or was a Mormon, he stopped off in Washington, D.C. in August. It's hot as heck in Washington, D.C. in August. And somehow in his mind, because he always was an entrepreneur, thought, you know, hot, cold something, cold root beer would be great. He ended up getting a A&W root beer franchise. He married his sweetheart, Alice Sheets. And they hopped in that jalopy there and drove across the United States to Washington, D.C. and opened this 9-seat root beer stand. Now, unlike some folk, again, roll up your sleeves, lead by example, a very industrious, entrepreneurial, innovative sort of gentleman. So they did serve ice-cold A&W root beer at a nickel a glass. Those sticky nickels were carried in a brown paper bag by Alice to the bank every other day, okay? Now, sure, it was hot, but then when the fall and then winter started setting in, it was getting cold. And other franchisees would go south for the winter, but not Mr. Marriott. He said, let's look at maybe serving something hot. His wife Alice goes to the Mexican embassy, gets with the chef there, learns how to make tamales, chili, and things like that, makes the hot food in the apartment that they had, and brings it to the restaurant, and thus the hot shop was born. And that was the beginning of Marriott. Marriott started as a restaurant company. We are no longer in the restaurant business. We're no longer in a lot of businesses that we have been in. Theme parks, food service management, senior living services, gosh, other types of restaurants, ice cream stands, you name it, we've been in a lot of businesses. Now, in 1985, it's a long time ago, a book was written, In Search of Excellence, Tom Peters. One of his principles of business was to stick to the knitting. Stick to those things that you know well and can do well. Well, Marriott International over the years realized that we could manage hotels as well, if not better, than everybody in the industry. And that's our sweet spot, and that's where we've landed. In 2001, we split off the food services business, and we've gradually morphed to what we are today. So, what we are today, large hotel company with a lot of things. We operate in 70 countries. We have over 300,000 associates. 3,500 managed and franchised units. Okay, here's a tip, a career tip. If you're looking at mom and pops to work for, it's okay if it's expedient at the time, but you really ought to look at companies with distribution. Okay? With distribution. Distribution basically means they have multiple outlets, multiple units where you can potentially move in your career and both move laterally and vertically. And sometimes you do have to take a step backwards if you need to take a couple of steps forward, okay? $11.7 billion in revenues last year. Our shareholders report isn't out yet. 18 brands and a factoid. Remember I said stick to the knitting. The hotel business and the timeshare business, while related, will each equally do better if they split up, particularly our timeshare business. So Marriott Vacation Club International becomes Marriott Vacations Worldwide. Thank you, Alan. Okay. So what are some of the keys to Marriott's success? Okay. First and foremost is you take care of the associate. And you see the quotation on the left. And some of you may or may not have heard this, but this really has been the mantra all these years. I've stayed with Marriott all these years. I'm not a young man, as you can see. I was going to spend 4 years with Marriott, leave and set up my own consulting practice. But because of Mr. Marriott, Bill Marriott, I've stayed because he leads by example. So take care of your associates, they'll take care of the guests. If you take care of the guests, they're going to come back again and again, right? That is the basic mantra, and that is what I've seen in my 21 plus years with Marriott. You have to show dedication to the customer. You have to believe in growth, because that's how you grow your business. You have to take pride in Marriott. And last but not least, you have to show the community where you operate that you do believe in and have social responsibility. Okay. Now, what's going on in trends and issues? It's a huge business, and it's thriving. Now, in this economy where travel's been constrained a bit, not quite as good, but it's still a thriving industry. And there's an emerging global middle class. Recently, I was reading an article about in China, and we have some Chinese students here, but in China, because of this mix of communism, capitalism, and entrepreneurship and so on, they are looking at potentially moving the wages of the Chinese workforce for American-operated companies up because they see the potential of creating this global middle class that indeed in turn would not only feed more of their income into the economy within China, but also become travelers themselves. So growth is important. 3 key areas that are focused on right now by most companies that operate globally: China, India, Brazil. And what we're seeing is some entrepreneurs and focus becoming more and more focused in Africa, not just Northern Africa, okay? Very interesting. In the Middle East also. Okay. So, baby boomers, and I hate to admit this, but you all, or a lot of you, are millennials. The next is the Gen Xers, right? Next category would be the baby boomers. And then there are the matures like me, and there are some in the audience. Usually we refer to them as geezers, but today we're going to be nice and call them matures. All right. The boomers are retiring. The boomers and the matures are retiring, right? The Gen Xers have become basically our sweet spot, or that customer group that most of our research focuses on in terms of customer sat, what they're looking for. This particular generation and yours is looking more for that lifestyle sort of experience. So brands like Renaissance, Edition, I hate to mention our competition, but brands like that are all targeted at that quest for lifestyle and a total experience. Okay, so let's look at how we're doing on time. Oh, we're doing wonderfully. I'm going to leave a little time for questions. It's always a good thing to do. Although sometimes I feel like the politicians in Washington who like nothing better than the sound of their own voices. So that's why I'm going to have to cut it a little short so you guys can get a chance to ask some questions. And by the way, I have learned that West Lafayette is really where it's happening, okay? It's not happening in Washington, D.C., because like spoiled children, we're all kind of consumed with what's going on right in Washington, D.C., in the Congress and what the president's doing. It's not really where the sweet spot of America is. It's right out here in the heartland. And being a person raised in Minnesota, I'm kind of a Midwesterner at heart. I hate to admit this. Now, this is where this presentation goes south. But I didn't really have a choice. I was asked to go teach at West Point, at the military academy. But in order to go there and teach, I had to get a master's degree or more. So the Army said, Steve, we'll send you back to graduate school for 2 years. I had to apply to a top 10 graduate school in English. That's my advanced degree. So, and it was like typical Army. I got the notice in March. Have you ever tried to apply to graduate school in March to enter in the fall? So I applied to a number of schools. Indiana happened to be one that was in the top 10 at the time. So guess what? I am a graduate of Indiana University, but of graduate level. I went to the University of North Dakota as an undergraduate. So I'm a Midwesterner at heart. All right. Now, and you might wonder, well, English, why'd you major in English? Well, when I was a young guy, I was a jock. I got recruited to wrestle at North Dakota back in the 60s. And I knew I wanted to teach. So I decided that getting a coaching certificate, so I minored in physical education. I said if I could teach English, there weren't that many men teaching English at the time, particularly coaches teaching English, so I majored in English, thinking I was going to be a shoo-in to get a job when I graduated. But the Army kind of intervened, and I found something else I loved, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, about what Confucius purportedly said. So here you go. It's it's probably more. This data is from a year and a half ago. It's probably higher than that. A $1.3 trillion industry, okay? 7.5 million jobs. And guess who are going to be the future leaders? All you guys. And again, boy, it really is awesome looking out here. What a great, you have a really large department. Some hospitality programs are very, very small. So you've enjoyed some of the benefits of having great professors, great environment, great opportunities, and I hope you all seize them. All right. Rich paid me, Professor Gazzelli paid me to say that, but no, not true. I really, truly, I wouldn't come here, I wouldn't have accepted to come and speak. I come to your black tie dinner because I truly believe in what you're doing here and the opportunities that you all have. And for you freshmen and sophomores and even juniors, hopefully you're seizing upon those opportunities. Okay, now, institutional investors, that's Wall Street. There was a study done by Jonathan Lowe and Capgemini, Ernst & Young, about how the Wall Street valued companies. He discovered empirically that 35% of that valuation was a result of the intangibles in business, not just profitability and some of the tangible aspects of business. And one of those key intangibles was the quality of the leadership team of that company and its performance, okay? So you can see how important it is, this whole notion of leadership. And by the way, leaders are not born and they're not made. It's a combination thereof. It's a combination. And everyone in this room is capable of being a leader. Everyone. Okay. So, It's a partnership. This career day, this whole career thing, thinking about what you're going to be when you grow up, it's a partnership. In the world of work and here in the university, it all starts with you. You are the center. Don't ever tell someone or ask someone, what should I do? What happens if I tell Alan Tuttle, sitting up here, who is your national recruiter from Marriott International, what he should do in his career? Well, if it goes south, who's he going to blame? You told me to do this. Never tell someone what to do in their career. You can make some suggestions, that's okay, but don't tell them what to do. This is what the individual has to do through these various mechanisms. You're here in school learning. You're gaining knowledge, and hopefully through your internships, you're taking that knowledge and converting it into skills. Okay? The next piece of the relationship is the supervisor in the world of work. But here at Purdue, it's your professors. It's the career services people. Is Janet here? I can't see. It's the career services people and your professors, okay? Make sure you're visible in those classrooms. And they are the ones imparting some of what they've learned over numerous years, either in industry and academe or academe. All right. And last of this triad is the company in the world of work that provides the systems. Marriott has a lot of computer assisted sort of systems in all sorts of venues, learning management system, performance management system, and so on. Here at Purdue, you have a lot of resources, a lot of tools available to you. Libraries with a lot of virtual stuff going on, co-ops, you name it, clubs, so on. Now, here's the career model. I'm going to show this now, and I'm going to show this at the very end. You don't have to take notes, but kind of take a mental note, because it's really about the individual, and you have to ask yourself, who am I? The answer is what? Do you know what you know? Are you skilled at what you know? Do you know what you're interested in doing, and does it match up with your values? Okay? That's the who am I. The perspective piece is how do others see me? It's important. In the world of work, it's very important. And in this school, it's very important. That's why you need to be visible in a positive way in the classroom and in your clubs. Step out. Take a risk. Now, it's trite, but it's true. If you never take the risk, you never have an opportunity to win or lose. And even if you lose, if you never took the risk, you wouldn't know. Okay? So proactivity. Next, you got place, which is really knowing what's going on in the world of work. The global economy is affecting these seniors that are getting ready to graduate because companies are not hiring as many assistant managers or supervisors as they were prior to this economic slump. That is expected to continue for a little while longer, but no one knows, okay? So that will affect. So that's why last night, those of you that I did talk to, I said interview with as many companies as you can. Don't just focus on one and say, if I don't get the job with that company, I'm not going to work or whatever. No, no, no. Focus on many companies. Next is possibilities. Those are the options. In the world of work, you can take a lateral, you can go for the promotion, you can take a step backwards, and so on. Okay? Here, you need to explore the opportunities of club management, lodging, tourism, whatever it is that you decide you want to pursue, restaurant management, and so on. And last, there's a very wise guy that said to me one day, Steve, someday is not a day of the week. So make your someday an actual day of the week or an actual time frame, get a plan. What gets written down is more likely to get done. That's the career model. Simple, right? All right, so competencies. Basically, knowledge, skills, and abilities. These are some fundamental competencies that we look at. Change management, communications. I'm only going to focus on the communications one, okay? You need to be able to write and speak. You is spelt Y-O-U. When you come in for an interview, When you come in for an interview, make sure that you project, you get eye contact, and try to avoid you know. All right. So those are basically the list of competency. So knowledge and skills, though, are the things that most people observe in you. So when your professor asks a question in the classroom and you answer it, that professor, by the way, is registering in his or her mind. Good answer. Knucklehead. That's what's happening. So these are observable, but those innate qualities that we all have. How many of you have done sorts, and if you haven't, Google personality test or assessment or something like that on when you go online, and get one of those short tests, take it, and it'll tell you a little bit about yourself or your predilections or your predispositions, okay? It's very helpful. How many people have done something like that? Myers-Briggs, any kind of assessment. If you haven't, do it. And if you have, pay attention. Because self-awareness is the breakfast of champions. You'd be surprised at how many people my age are not self-aware. They think because they've gotten to where they are, have done, or whatever, it's just because they're magnanimous and wonderful or whatever. We all have room to develop something. And if we understand our psychological preference, if we understand we get our energy from extroversion versus introversion. By the way, you know the bane of introverts? It's the extrovert in the office that because they can't spend more than 20 minutes at their computer screen, get up and go out and suck the energy out of the introverts out there that just want to be left alone, right? Anybody relate to that? Students, if you're tired at the end of the day and you really don't feel like going down to, what's the local establishment? Harry's. It's Sharky's at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, but it's a world away. If you don't feel like going down there for a pop, then maybe you're an introvert because you've got to recharge your batteries. It's okay. But if you're aware that's your tendency, then you're going to do some things like my introverted accountant's son. He knows that his sociability score is kind of low unless he pays attention to it, right? So he pays attention to it. He'll say goodnight to the security guys, stuff like that, because he knows that that sort of thing is important. All right. So these are the things that you can observe in people once they kind of understand what's expected in the workplace. And these are the sorts of things that we look for in our front office sort of hourly paid associates, especially those that we want to be hospitality oriented, be able to multitask, to engage the guest. It's not like the airline person. How many people have tried to get the attention of that airline agent who's got his or her face buried in the computer screen and doesn't even recognize you're standing there? I want to choke the living anyway. It's like just say, "Excuse me, sir, I see you there. We love you. I'm just closing out this flight. I'll get with you in a moment." Wouldn't that make a difference? Don't ignore me on the line. That's what I say. Okay. So naturally takes charge of the situation. Some people, these are the kind we love too. Naturally proactive. Have vision because they're looking. They're looking at their environment. They're not here. They're here. They proactively can engage a guest or situation, and those are the ones that have a predisposition to do that. Okay? All right. So, next thing was interest. This is that thing I said earlier about find a job you love, you won't have to work another day in your life. So, there's lots of opportunities in the hospitality industry. Find the one that you're going to love. You didn't decide to major in hospitality tourism management because it was easy. How many people think it's easy? Raise your hands. Come on, raise your hands. Okay, nobody's raising their hands. That's good. Dean, did you see that? Dr. Gazzelli? Okay, good. It isn't easy. And that's why, any employers here from, rental car companies here? How about pharmaceutical sales? Well, on some campuses, these industries have discovered you all because you're technologically sound, you're mathematically sound, you have business acumen, and you got a pulse. What's not to like? If I worked for Merck or one of those companies looking for pharmaceutical salespeople, I'd be right here recruiting a number of you to come sell drugs for me. All right. That didn't sound right, did it? Did you get that? All right. So, every job, keep this in mind, every job has 4 components, and they're weighted differently depending on the job, depending on the career field. People, data, things, and ideas. Okay, now, if I'm a hotshot salesperson, Stephanie, if you looked at this and you had to invent strategies, what would most of your job be? What would the percentage of your job primarily be in those 4 things? Any answer is a good answer. Just take a stab.
60% of people and ideas.
Aha, people and ideas. That's exactly right. Now, how that's weighted may vary a little bit, but those would be the 2 most important things in a sales job. If you naturally don't like interacting with people, don't go into sales. Heck, find another major. No, I'm kidding. Well, sort of kidding. If you're self-aware that you may not like people that well, you have to decide, do I really want to spend the rest of my life interacting with people? Although there are not a lot of jobs where you don't have to interact with some people. All right. So you see, every job has a little different component. If you're you work as an accountant in night audit, data and things may be the weight of your job. Okay? So you see, when you're thinking about what is it that I want to look at getting up and performing every day, that's the key. There are a lot of unhappy people in this world of work. They don't enjoy going to work because they're in a job they don't love. You need to love it. There's been numerous studies. If you love your job, you perform well. If you're bored with your job, or if you don't love your job, you don't. Okay? Simple. All right. How are we doing? Oh, we're doing good. 10, 15 minutes for questions? Good? Okay. So, achieving, accomplishments. We're talking about values now, and there are some dimensions of things just to think about when you're thinking about what is it that's going to create the most satisfaction for you in the world of work. Affiliation, of course, is being part of a group. And something about affiliation, I think, is what grabbed me to stay with Marriott. Being a part of a meaningful organization. Now, I also am a certified Myers-Briggs guy, so I know that the SJ temperament, especially the ESTJ profile, tends to want to belong to a meaningful organization, and I found one. Okay? By the way, if you haven't done them, I said it earlier, but I'm going to say it again. Take one of these assessments so that you can just home in on kind of what that predisposition is. It really, really will help you. Short story, talk about my 2 sons. They're polar. We have my younger son, the illustrated man, okay? Free thinker, never knew a boundary he wanted to keep. Guess what occupation he does today? You'll never guess. He's a registered nurse, but all his tattoos are below the neckline, no farther down than this on his arm, even though he's got a whole sleeve on his leg, you know. He's my free spirit, but I didn't know that. I was trying to manage him when he was younger. You know, no boundaries. Also a champion wrestler. I wanted to kill him. But then once I knew his Myers-Briggs type, and he knew it, we started getting along better. The older son, now he's Mr. Anal Retent. He's my accountant. Totally polar, or ISTJ, right? Introverted, detail-oriented, bring things to closure. He learned that the reason, he's a handsome young guy. He's got a gorgeous girlfriend. But in high school, he didn't realize that people were looking at him because that natural introversion didn't exactly open up the gates for people to approach him. So he didn't really know what was going on. So he did his Myers-Briggs. When he learned he was an introvert, they need to reach out and touch someone in a politically correct way. It changed his behavior. It wasn't perfect, but he was self-aware. That's what it's about, self-awareness. All right. So we're back here on values. I got off on a little bunny trail there, sorry. Acquiring. If you want to be wealthy, get in another industry, for Pete's sakes. We're not wealthy in the context of someone working for Microsoft or something, okay? We can do well. We can do well. but you don't start out well. 40 grand compared to other occupations. An EE starts at about 60. A chemical or a petroleum engineer starts up around 70 as an undergrad. So switch to engineering if you want to take engineering, calculus, and all those other things. Otherwise, stick to the knitting right here. All right. And this last piece, interesting. We have a brilliant young woman that does brand marketing for us, employer brand marketing. She's brilliant. She's a published author, tweets, and has her own blog, has all this. She's wonderful. But she has this entrepreneurial spirit that is making her question, is this the time of my life, and she's a young woman, this is the time of my life to really develop my own consultancy. I don't really need to be part of this affiliation thing in my value set, because I don't need to be part of a large company. I need more to be able to spend some time with friends and develop some of these concepts that I have. And I think that's great because she understands what her motivation is. Okay, so perspective. This is the career derailer. It's not going to kill you here in the schoolhouse as long as you're paying your tuition, but it's going to kill you in the world of work. You need to be aware of how others see you. Okay? You need to pick up on the cues. You need to perform. You need to treat people with dignity and respect. Okay? You need to manage your reputation. You notice the second thing person, Facebook, used to have MySpace and some of these things. I did discover something on my younger son's Facebook page. I said, son, you probably need to take that off. It was from about 5 years ago. So you need to manage your Facebook, and you need to manage anything, because as the fearless Congressman Weiner found out, that anything you put on the internet is exposure. All right. And then the last is performance, okay? All right, come on. One thing about intensely, type AA personalities, we get a little carried away. Some of you probably do it too. You click the mouse a few too many times and goof up your... All right, here we go. This is really paying attention to the external. And I didn't draw it in there, and I was going to, but I said, to heck with it. Truth be known, that is a picture, and you had to click in there and do some other stuff. I didn't feel like doing it. But the global economy really is what we all need to be aware of, and how it's affecting what we intend to do, okay? And I said that earlier. And these are just some of the external things you need to be aware of in order for you to kind of chart, is this the right thing for me? And the truth is, hospitality education, I may not have said this 7, 8 years ago, but I can say it today. A hospitality education in a great school like Purdue will serve you well, whether you go into the hospitality industry or some other place. So you did pick the right major, guys. All right. Now, career options. There's the list of them on the right there. Explore them. Don't just set your sights on one thing. Event management is not J-Lo doing weddings. It's showing up early and leaving late. It's being on your feet. It's having thought leadership. It's being quick. But most importantly, it's making the guests feel like you're on top of everything. And the truth of the matter is, working a wedding ain't any fun. You've seen Bridezilla and all that kind of stuff. Oy, hopefully none of you are going to do that, which leads me to one other slight bunny trail. Okay, and I always get in trouble when I say this, but it's too bad. The biggest career inhibitor right upon graduation is having a significant other. It's a no-brainer. So the young man wants to stay in Chicago. The young woman gets the opportunity in Phoenix. Who wins? Nobody. Neither. Doesn't matter. Right? I see it all the time. Or they both want to go to Sheboygan. Work for Johnson Brats or whatever it is they do up there. Johnsonville. There we go. All right. So there you go. You have a lot of opportunities. You really do. Club management. It's great. Work in the Visitors Bureau. Great. Work in a hotel, great. Work in a restaurant, tons of. Remember what I said about distribution, though. You need to make sure that there is something there. And I'm going to retract my statement a little bit. There's always a great place to start. And if the opportunity really is in a smaller company, but you have a chance to maybe get equity, or you have a chance to really demonstrate what you have to that owner, then go for it. Why not? Why not? All right. So now we're at the last part of this bad boy, and it's called, you got to have a plan. And it has to be written down. And you have to think it through. And it has to be time framed. So you perceiving types out there. Now, what's a perceiving type? You have judgers, and it has nothing to do with judging people. It just means you like structure. That's a J in the Myers-Briggs type. The P's drive J's nuts. The J's ready to go early, like I was this morning, because I want to check out the technology. The P would have shown up 5 minutes before, discovered that the technology was screwed up, and would have started their presentation late because the technology wasn't working, where if they would have shown up a little earlier, it would have been fixed. Okay? So perceiving types are not necessarily predisposed to writing out a plan with a time frame on the end, because perceiving types like to leave things open-ended. And some of you are P's. Do your Myers-Briggs, figure that out, and you'll realize why those J's drive you crazy. And why those J's want to choke the living you-know-what out of you when you're late for the meeting, right? All right. So, craft a specific, time-framed action plan. All right. A force field analysis. You're getting all these little cute little tips today. Force field analysis, fancy name for something simple. You all, I don't know if you all, maybe not, but I just put a goal in the middle there as a manager. You want to be a manager in some great company. Okay? Could be a manager in the food service industry, whatever. Well, there's some positive things, forces that are working on the left side up there to help make that happen. Degree is on track. Remember I said, you have to complete your degree. You freshmen and sophomores, don't be discouraged. Get your degree. Recently, a young woman from James Madison University doing an internship at Marriott headquarters informs her supervisor she was supposed to be going back for her senior year. She wasn't going back. I almost killed her, but anyway, she's going back. All right, now, those are the positives. Then you got to think of the challenges. It's always hard to think of the negatives, the challenges. But you need to think that through. So if you haven't had an internship and you need one, get with it. If you haven't signed up for interviews, sign up. And if you believe that you have limited time because you're overextended, because you, again, are one of those Myers-Briggs types that gets involved in 50 things and completes 10, you need to be aware that that can happen, and you'll feel very time constrained. All right, so do your force field analysis, and then put a plan together. And the plan is designed to, big word, ameliorate, temper, if you will, the challenges, okay, and improve the strengths if you can. So in this little mock plan, you have your goal, learn about 3 companies in different hospitality areas, talk to Career Center. So you have to actively do that. That's your action step. And you got to get it done by next Friday. Then you have to get an internship. And you got to get that set up. So you're going to go to the website. You're going to apply. You're going to reach out to some of these companies, and you're going to do that by February. And then you're a lousy time manager, so you need to do better in time management. You're going to create a weekly schedule. You may even go to our friend Google and find some self-help aids to help you plan better and get your time going. And you're going to do that by Monday. So that's your little plan. Simple. Keep it simple. 15-page plans never work. It's like the 5-year defense plan. It's like probably your university's 5-year plan. 5 years from now, it will be remotely, you'll just go, where did this come from? Seriously. It's about a 2-year horizon. And even that's stretching it a bit. All right. So, last thoughts. Diversify your skills. Don't become Johnny or Jeannie one-tone. The more skills and knowledge you got in your kit bag, the more marketable you're going to be to all these companies, these great companies that are here now and becoming again in the spring. Okay? The next thing is the network. I talked about that earlier. 70+% of jobs you get through a network. I'm only working for Marriott. Marriott doesn't hire English majors and former Army officers who were English majors. I've talked to a lot of former Marines, Army officers, Navy folks, Air Force, and so on. But you have to have a degree that's kind of lines up, or experience that lines up with the industry, okay? However, I'm with Marriott. The Army gave me an opportunity to go to Marriott. 1987, the Army loaned me to Marriott to work in human resources so that I could steal shamelessly what they did in management, development, and training. Because the Army has, just like the Air Force and the rest of the services, have a lot of civilians that run those posts, camps, and stations, rec centers, guest quarters, all that kind of stuff. And they wanted to figure out what great work Marriott was doing in developing managers so they could use that to bring it back to the Army. Well, long story short, the Army in its infinite wisdom, I actually did go back to the Army, but I never used what I learned at Marriott. I shouldn't say that. I used a lot of what I learned at Marriott, but I went back and worked in legislative affairs for a couple years, and it's the reason why I have kind of a jaded view of our elected officials. Both sides of the aisle, I might add. All right. So when it was time for me to retire from the Army, I called up the gentleman I used to run with every day. He had just been promoted to head of the training department. He said, hey, come on over, let's talk. He hired me. So I used my network, all right? But I still had to prove myself on the job. So use your network, create it, be visible, make sure your professors know who you are, make sure that these companies that come on campus know who you are, and you will be employed. If you don't do that, I'm not so sure. Your choice. And last, of course, have a plan. That's it. There's the 5-step model. Do I have time for a couple questions? We're out of time? We're out of time? Well, I told you.
We have time for...
We can take one question.
Mr. Bauman would like one question. Anybody have a great question for him?
Oh, no pressure.
Great question.
Any question's a great question. That's fine. It's on the hard drive of this computer back there, so I'll leave it up to the...
We put the presentation up on the internet. Okay, we record it and put it up. Okay.
Sure.
One more question? That was a quick one. Anybody else?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry? My favorite part about Marriott culture? My favorite part about Marriott culture is Mr. Marriott himself. We're sitting with the president of a university. The president of the university turns to me. He says, Steve, what do you like about our students? And I said, well, quite frankly, they're kind of students, and it's in a very positive way. They're blue-collar students that roll up their sleeves and lead by example. And Mr. Marriott's just going like this. That's what the culture is all about. Okay? It's rolling up your sleeves, getting the job done. It's an arduous industry. If you think you're going in as a manager and you ask people to do it for you, you're making a mistake. And I learned that as a captain in Vietnam. You got to get in there and do the job. All right. Is that mine?
After this, we're on our way over to the North Ballroom for lunch. We have Steve, we have a small gift, token of our appreciation. Thank you so much for sharing Marriott with us.
Well,
It's great to have you on campus.
Thank you. And if any of you have any question or whatever, you can grab me over at lunch, I guess. If some of them going to lunch and so on.
He'll be at the fair for a while, and he'll be at lunch.
Yeah, and I'll be here for a while, too.
You going to be at the Marriott booth?
I'll be at the Marriott booth. Yeah, there you go. I'll be at the Marriott booth.
Okay. Well,